In this video, I'm going to walk you through how to create a custom email response generator app that uses OpenAI to help us generate custom emails for our particular niche or whatever we're trying to do in our business. So this is an alternative to using something like ChatGPT, where you can definitely do the same thing, where you can provide it the prompts and so forth. But this will be doing our own version, and I kind of want to quickly walk you through this. Very simple to do. It does require just a bit of coding, but even if you're not a coder, stick around because it's pretty simple to put this up. There's really not that much to it. I'm going to walk you through this step by step. So before we go any further into how we do this, let's walk through what this is actually going to look like. So we're going to have a simple front-end web application that we're going to write. On the left-hand side is going to be a sidebar with a API key. More on that in a minute. And then on the right-hand side is where we're going to allow the user to type in or paste in an email that they receive from the customer and then generate a nice response based on what the email has in there. So for example, if I were to come in here and type in an email, or paste it in, I should say, email from Bob, he bought our widget 1000 and he's clearly not happy with it. He's asking for a refund. So based on what it sees, if I generate this response, it's going to look at this. It's going to send the information that it knows from what I've told it and how we're storing that. And I'll show you how to do that in a little bit. And it's going to give back a nice response, including things like coupon code. So it recognizes that it's a negative email. So it's trying to apologize and also say, oh, by the way, here, put a coupon code for a discount. Here I have another email. Now this one is different in that this one is a positive email. Hi, I wanted to let you know, write an email, let you know how pleased I am with your widget 1000. It works just as expected. Keep up the good work. And it should be it, not I. So it works just as expected. And keep up the good work. And I'll generate a response for this user or for this person. And you'll see that this one is actually going to be different. This one's actually going to give us a different response where it's asking the user, because it sees that it's a positive email, it's asking the user if they wouldn't mind doing a Google review for us. So we're responding back saying thank you and do a Google review. So this type of being able to generate the correct response based on the sentiment of the email is also kind of what we're going to be building here. In order to build this, we're going to need a few things. Number one, we're going to need to have Python. And we're also going to need an editor such as Visual Studio Code. So you need to want to have both of those set up. And if you don't have them set up, you can go ahead and watch. I do have a video on how to set up your Python environment if you want to watch that. We will also need to have an OpenAI account. So this is not the same thing as ChatGPT. So what you do is you're going to want to go over to openai.com and you're going to want to sign up. And you're also going to want to sign up for the version that lets you access their API. Since we're not going to be using ChatGPT front end, that sits on top of OpenAI, we're going to be using the API itself. An API is simply just think of that as more of a programming interface. Once you create your account, you'll need to go ahead and generate an API key. Okay, the API key is what we showed you on the screen on the left-hand side. You will need that key anytime we make a request to the OpenAI service to give us back results. Anytime we make a request, we're going to have that key. So it's very simple to do. Once you create your account, you're going to go down here to create key. You're going to type in your key information. And then once you do that, you'll go ahead and copy that to the clipboard. One thing I'll mention real quick about the API key is that you will need to just hold on to that. Make sure you protect that. And if for some reason you were to accidentally give that to somebody, they're going to be using your account to make requests. One thing I'll quickly mention is when you do sign up for the OpenAI account, you will have to give it a budget amount that you want to be able to spend. For example, in my case, I have mine set to $10 a month. I go nowhere near that, even with all the testing that I'm doing, because each one of these emails that we're going to generate is going to be no more than 1 or 2 pennies, if at all that much. As a lot of them are less than that. And I'll actually even show you how you can control that and watch that as you make the requests themselves and how we can get that feedback so we know exactly how much this is costing us. The models themselves are what we're going to be using. We're going to be using ChatGPT 4 or ChatGPT 3.5 Turbo. But for our purposes, we're just going to use the 3.5 Turbo version, and I'll show you exactly how you can even flip that within the application that we're going to write. Okay, so you'll need to have that. 2 additional things we'll be using is we're going to be using something called Streamlit. And Streamlit is a way for us to be able to build these quick applications in Python with little effort. And we'll show you exactly how easy it is, but that's free. You don't have to pay for that, but we will be using their library. The other thing we're going to be using is something called Langchain, and Langchain sits on top of our OpenAI calls. So we're going to be using that inside of Python to talk to our OpenAI engine. Okay, so my screen is set up here. I've got my editor on the left-hand side. I've got my browser on the right-hand side, and this is where we're going to be able to kind of do our work here over here, and we'll actually be able to see the results on the right-hand side once we get going. Again, this is our finished product, so let's go ahead and finish our setup. So what you're going to want to do is you're going to open up Visual Studio Code or whatever editor you're using. You're going to want to open up a brand new folder. Okay, so just make sure it's an empty folder. Then down here, we're going to install a couple packages that we're going to need. We're going to need to do pip install of the OpenAI library. And then we're also going to do Streamlit, just like that. We're going to do Python .env. And we are going to do tick token. And last but not least, we're going to do Langchain. Hit enter on that. That should install all of the required packages that we'll need. And once that's done, we should have all the software installed and our development environment should be ready to go. We'll let that finish there for a second. All right, everything's ready to go. Next thing we're going to do is we're going to want to create 5 files in this folder. So we're going to want to create a .env file, just like you see it there, .env. And we're going to also want to create an app.py file. That will be our main application code base. And then we're going to create 2 additional files here. And we're going to create one, which is going to be few shot utilities, py. And actually going to rename this to utility. It's singular. Okay. And then few shot details .py. And then one more file, which is where we're going to store our data at, which is going to be data.json, JSON. So that's actually where we're going to store our instructions for our application. All right, once we have that, we have all the files that we need. All right, now we're ready to start working on our app. So first thing we're going to do here is we're going to set up our interface here. And just get started to show you how you do that, we're going to be using Streamlit. So I'm in my app.py file. I'm going to type in import Streamlit. And give it a alias there. And we're just actually, for right now, we're just simply going to do a couple commands here. We're going to, and I'll explain what this is here in a second. So what we're going to do is we are going to set up a header page so we can actually see our header information there. And then let me just comment this out for 1 minute. We'll come back to that and show you how that works. So I'm going to comment that out, and I just want to get this working and show you how we can get going. So I'm going to go ahead. Also, by the way, if you haven't already done this, I recommend you turn on autosave. If you don't turn on autosave, just make sure that you save your files after every change. And if you don't have files saved, you'll see an indicator up there letting you know that. But I have that turned on, just a little easier for me. So what I'm going to do now is I'm going to run Streamlit, run, and app.py. And when I do that, what should happen once it gets going is I should see my page show up. So what's nice about this is if I make changes in my application, I can come over here and see them almost immediately. For example, if I come down here and I say email response generate XX, you'll notice that this will show me up here that has been a source file change, and I can rerun it. What I always like to do sometimes is just go ahead and set this always rerun. That way any changes I'm making will be reflected in my application. So for example, if I take that away, you can see that changes. And we'll be using these Streamlit commands. Like for example, this is giving us a header. we're going to be able to do the same thing, being like as far as, for example, putting in a text input and so forth. So once we have our basic page here, we want to go ahead and set up our ability to get the API key. So there's a few things we'll have to do for that. One is we want to grab the API key. So if you don't have yours, make sure you go back to OpenAI, grab your API key from your from the screen in OpenAI. It lets you see that. Hold on to that, put that in the clipboard. We are then going to want to save this as an environment variable. So the way we're going to do that is we're going to come over here to our .env file, and we are going to paste in our key. And it'll look just like this here. All right, and what this .env file will allow us to do is allow us to put this in the environment for our application, so we don't have to keep typing it in or pasting it in so that it'll remember it. We're also not putting it in source code, so that's also a nice thing. We don't want to put things like this. Again, this has to be something that you protect. You don't want to put that in source code and inadvertently checked it into source control. So we kind of typically move that out into its own file. All right, now what we have to do is set up to read this in. So what we're going to do is we are going to come up here and we're going to import one additional library for now. Actually, two. We're going to import OS. And we are going to import load env. And then we're going to want one command up here at the very top, load.env. And all of this, what this is doing, it allows us to pull in that API key from our environment. And then once we have that, we can uncomment these lines here, and this will pull it in from the environment, and this will set the sidebar and put a text input in the sidebar that defaults to our API key. And so if I go back here, you can kind of see there I have it. Okay, so as I'm making changes, you're seeing that. So everything's working good. I now am ready to put the last piece of our UI together, and we'll do that next. All right, now we have to go ahead and put our text box up here and our generate button, and that is going to look like this. So we're going to paste in these commands here, and I'll kind of quickly walk through what this is doing. Make it a little bit bigger. All right, so what we're saying here is that we're actually going to have a form on here, and then we're going to put a text area, and it's going to have this as the title, and then over here we're going to wait for the response. So whatever is typed in here is going to be assigned to that variable. Then we're also going to put a generate button on there. So that's a submit button. And we're going to have the text generate. And when the user hits submit, we're going to get back a message letting us know that they hit the submit button. Then we have a little warning here. And this is just kind of a convenience. So if you want to just make sure that your key has been set correctly, we can put a warning if for some reason that key isn't working or isn't there. For example, if I were to remove this out and tab out, you'll see that now I've got a message letting me know that my key is missing. Okay, so a little convenience there. And then last but not least, we need to put in a check here to say if the submitted button was pressed, and just do this here. All right, so this is going to be, so right now, once the button is pressed, we want to just, right now, we'll just write out. We're going to use the right component, and we'll just say, hello world. Okay, so right now, the way it works is I can put whatever I want in here, hit generate, and I get the hello world. Okay, so this is essentially the entire user interface. This is all the code to make the user interface work. The last part is going to be where we actually hook this up so that it actually generates what we want it to do. And we'll work on that next. So let's start filling out the portion that we need to actually get this to talk to our OpenAI service. So what we're going to do is we want to set up the prompt so we can put all of our details together into a single prompt. And we're going to leverage a couple of different things here. One is I want to have the data itself, the instructions and everything else we're going to send to the engine. I want to have it so that we can load it from a file that can be changed, easily changed. So that's the purpose of the data.json file. So let's navigate to the data.json file, and I'm going to paste in some details here, and I'll explain what this is. I'm going to go ahead and turn on word wrap. Here we go. Sorry about that. Let's go to word wrap so we can see everything. All right. So what we're going to do, anytime we make a request to generate email, we want to send instructions for how we want the AI engine to behave. And that's the purpose of these instructions here. We're essentially telling it how we want it to handle emails and how we want it to generate those emails. For example, we're going to use our writing style. So we're going to look at the examples that we're sending, and the AI engine is going to write in a similar style to what we're saying here. Now, these email bodies and responses are samples. So you can provide as many samples as you like. Typically, somewhere probably no more than 3 or 4 or 5 is a good idea. But the more detailed these are and longer, then obviously you would get a better response. These are a little shorter, just for demonstration purposes. But we're putting the instructions here for how we want the engine to behave. We're telling it we want to track the sentiment for the email. And if it's a negative sentiment, we want to tell them to include a discount, because that's how we got our discount coupon code in there. And then we said, if it's a positive sentiment, then we want to encourage them for a Google review. And obviously, if they ask for a refund, we also want to ask for their order number if we don't know it, okay? And then we can have some samples of emails that we received and responses that we sent. And we do that a few times. The email we received, here's a second one, and a response we sent back. And by packaging all this up and sending it to the engine is going to behave and kind of learn how we want these emails to be structured. Now, I do quickly want to mention a little bit about what we're seeing here also. So this is actually referred to as JSON, JavaScript Object Notation, and it has a specific format that you need to adhere to. So you have to make sure when you're making changes in here that you change it where it doesn't break the format here. So for the most part, if you want to make changes to the instructions, just make sure you change them here. This is actually the field that we're going to read in, and this is the value that goes with that field. And then this is our examples area. And then here we've got a collection or a list of multiple examples. And so, for example, if you wanted to add a third one, what I would do is copy that, and I would paste it underneath as a third example, and just make sure you put a comma there and put everything wrapped around curly braces, and make sure you keep these field names as is, so that the JSON format is maintained. Okay, so that's how you add more that you want to. Just make sure you make your changes within the double quotes here, and then you should be good to go. Okay, so now let's go ahead and work on getting this read into our program. So that is the purpose of this few-shot details py file. So we want to go to that one, and here is where we're going to put in a couple methods, and I'm going to copy and paste this in, and I will explain what's going on. All right, so here is our complete file, and what we have here is a Python class, and within here are methods that we can use to load the data. So there's a couple that we care about. This is how we load the examples, and here's how we load the instructions, and this is how we will load in the template. And the template is that whole packaging that we're going to do. We want to package up a number of different pieces of data together into what is called a prompt template. And a prompt template is a Langchain construct that basically is there to make it convenient for us to formulate prompts that make sense for the AI engine. So we send them. And the template is the way we do that. And the way it works is you will give it essentially a string, and what will happen at runtime when the program runs, it will replace these placeholders with the actual data. And that's the purpose here, is to kind of give you a layout of here's how the message should look. And where you see the curly braces here, that's actually where the dynamic data will be replaced with when it needs to. Okay, and then there's a suffix, which is also part of the email prompt that we're sending together. So number of methods here, and all of this is going to do is just give us all of that dynamic data from our file and allow us to pull that together so that we can send this to the OpenAI engine as a single prompt. Okay, and that's what we're working on with this file. The last file we need to work on is what is called the FewShot utility file. And now this is another file, and I'm going to walk through. This is the main one that deals with Langchain. All right, so this is where all the Langchain specific pieces are. So we're going to start with a number of imports. All right, so these are the various components and classes, if you will, that we need to pull from Langchain that we can use to formulate our OpenAI prompts. We're going to be using the OpenAI model, so that's kind of what this allows us to do. We have our prompt template. That is what we're going to use to package everything together. We have a function here called getOpenAI callback, which will allow us to return the amount, the cost associated with the request. So you can actually see whenever every request is made, how much did it actually cost? What did this cost me as far as off my budget for the API? Okay, and we'll show you how to do that. And then some of this also are just prompt templates that we're going to use. So these are all things we're going to start using. All right, so we're going to create a class here, and the class is going to have a constructor. All right, and don't worry if you're not all that familiar with how Python works with classes. Essentially, this is a way for us to pull a lot of data together and be able to formulate the prompt the way we need it to. So we're going to be able to send into this utility all of our different pieces, all the data coming from the data JSON file, the data coming from our page as well. All that's going to get pulled together, and that's the purpose of this utility, is to kind of bring it all together. So that's the purpose of this here, is to get things going with that. And these last couple prompts here are what we use to actually construct the full prompt to send to the engine. Okay, and again, all of this is going to be provided to you, so you can actually get to those. So if you want to go to my repo, you can see all of this together. But I'm just going to make it a little easier for purposes of time, and I'll just explain what these are. And then if you want to, you can go back and look at specifically what these are doing. All right, so here's our prompt. So we're going to pass in our email body to the prompt, and that's going to construct that prompt template. And we're pulling in our examples, we're pulling all the instructions, we're taking the email message that we are putting here. That's where that's going to go. I'll show you how to hook that up in a minute. We're then going to format that all and essentially pull together in a single string that has all of that data. The stuff that you would typically do in ChatGPT, essentially, that's what this is doing. It's packaging it all together with all that data that we can then send that to the OpenAI engine. And this is getting us the prompt template that we need to do as part of that. And then here is actually the main thing that's actually going to be called whenever someone clicks the generate button. When they click the generate button, we are going to pass in the information that we got from the field, as well as our OpenAI key, and also including the model. You have the option to change the model. And I'm actually going to change this to be ChatGPT 3.5 Turbo, so it's a little cheaper. All right, so that'll give us the model, and then we're going to package all that up. We're then going to use that callback. That's going to give us the ability to, after we're done, it's going to return the amount that it actually cost us to make that request. And that's what all this is going to do, is essentially package that up. Here is the call actually to the engine itself. All right, so this is the link between Langchain and OpenAI. We're passing in the temperature, essentially is the randomness. How creative do you want the answer to be? The number can be anywhere from 0 to 1. So we're kind of right in the middle at 0.5. The lower the number, the less creative it is. The higher the number, the more creative. So if you did 0.9, you want it to be very creative. If you did 0, then you don't want it to be very, very creative. I'm going to be somewhere in the middle. We're also passing our API key, and we're passing the model. So all of that gets passed in, and then essentially we package up that entire prompt message, everything that we talked about, all together into a single object, and we send that to the engine. And then what comes back is the engine's response. And then that's what we're actually going to do. That's the response coming back, and we're just simply going to return back that content of that response. And so this call here is what we're actually going to call from within our app.py. So we'll do that next. Okay, so let's go ahead into app.py and let's finish this off. So what we have to do is we need to add in our two classes that we just created. So we need to add those to our imports. So we can come up here and paste those in. And then once we have those, then we can go ahead and start using those. So the first thing we're going to do is we are going to go down to our after we get our OpenAI key, so before we actually go further into the form, we're then going to get the examples, the instructions, and also, by the way, you're noticing over here on the right-hand side I have this error, and that is because I have autosave turned on, and since I have a syntax error, that's why you're seeing those errors. If that becomes annoying, just go ahead and turn off the autosave, and then just make sure you save it yourself. But I'll just leave it on for now. So as soon as I fix the syntax errors, then it's fine. So we're back to a good screen here. So here is where we pulled in our examples. This is where we pulled in the instructions. So that's getting that information from that data.json file. We're then pulling in the suffix. That's our instructions. That's our ending statement. So that's going to be the thing that's going to tell the engine where to start, where your next instruction is for the engine. And then we're going to generate that entire example template. So the example itself. So the example template itself has variables. So you can inject variables into your examples the same way as anything else. So essentially all that's going to get packaged together. And then when we're ready, we're going to come into our form. And as soon as someone hits the generate button, we are then going to call the API. But before we do that, let me just take one more thing here, copy this, and let's package everything up. Okay, so that's the utility. We're sending the examples, the instructions, we're sending the suffix, we're passing in a variable to say that we're going to replace the email body. So that'll dynamically replace the email body that it sees inside of the template. And it's also passing in the example template and the example variables. Okay, so all of this gets packaged together, and that has all that data. It's going to have the data from the file. It's going to have the data, eventually it's going to have the data from our page itself. All that's going to be packaged up, and we're going to send that to the OpenAI engine. And the way we're going to do that is we're going to put a statement here inside the form. So the user is going to enter in the information, they're going to hit the generate button, and as long as we don't have a warning because of the key, if they do have an API key, we keep going. If they hit the submit button, instead of writing hello world, we are going to do this. We are going to get rid of that and check this. All right, so as soon as I hit the submit button, and we do have an API key, then it's going to get the prompt, so that full prompt from everything together, and then it's going to call that generate email response. It's going to pass our OpenAI API key. It's going to pass in the prompt, everything that's packaged together, and then it's going to call it, and eventually we're going to get our email response. And then essentially we're going to write out the generated email response field there, and along with after that will be our email response itself. All right, that should be it. Let's go ahead over here and let's try it out. All right, simple email, hit generate. And we'll go ahead and wait a second. You can see it's running up here. So it does take a few minutes for it to send it to the engine. And sure enough, here's our response. Hi, Ted. Thank you for reaching out. We're thrilled to hear you love our Widget 1000 product. Your satisfaction is top priority. It looks really good. Thanks for your support. It should also ask you right here, greatly appreciate if you do a Google review for our company, just like we asked it to. Since this was a positive sentiment, it signed it according to our examples. So it saw the examples and how we signed the other examples. So right down here, we were signing our samples as Sincerely Tom Jones, President Acme Electronics. And we did that a couple of times. So it knew that, okay, our style includes a signature that looks like that. So that's why it included that. And it also included our instructions. And then it also included appreciation, a coupon code for 10% discount. So that's also part of it. So the engine generated all of that from that single instruction and these examples. Also, as I mentioned, since we were using that callback here when we did this, that allowed us to print out and get access to the tokens used and how much the actual cost was. So that entire email that we sent, generated, cost us not even a single penny to generate that one. Okay. We also printed out the model that we were using. We were using the GPT 3.5 Turbo model, and there you have it. So now we have a really good framework for us to be able to create email responses. If you want to, you can have additional fields to have additional information passed in, just like we did with the email message itself. You can have maybe perhaps who it's from. You can have a from clause. You can have a signature line. Maybe we don't default the signature to always be the president. Maybe you passed it in as your example. And so that's kind of the power of all of this, is to be able to do that. I hope you found this interesting, and please like and subscribe if you find value. If you like other videos, or if you want to see me do other videos, or if you have questions or suggestions on this video, please add those as comments as well. Thanks so much.